All right, everyone. Here we go. Some multiple choice questions on engagement communication. Well, in communicating with those charged with governance, the auditor must decide whether to communicate with the audit committee or the client's entire board of directors. Which of the following considerations will be least relevant to this decision? All right. So we've seen how there are different matters to be communicated, right? Different reasons to communicate to various different parties, right? Whether it's severity or obviously you're not going to communicate to management if management's the cause of the problem. So just varying reasons why you communicate to each layer of a client's organization, right? So first we're going to look at which is least relevant. Is it management's preference? Yeah, I mean, that seems like a decent answer, right? Like, what's their preference? An audit's not really up to anyone's preference. It's up to the rules, right? It's up to the rules, and so I'm gonna say that's possibly an answer. But let's keep reading. Whether the audit committee will be able to provide further information and explanations that the auditor may require. Okay, so that's a decent consideration, right? So deciding whether to speak to the audit committee or the entire board of directors. Well, maybe the audit committee could provide further information. So, any specific reason that you talk to one group over the other, I think that's a good reason. The nature of the matters to be communicated, yeah, I mean, for sure, right? We just talked about, if maybe there's fraud within the audit committee, then you want to talk to just the board, right? There are different reasons, right? So that's for sure going to be important. And then lastly, regulatory requirements related to audit communications with those charged with governance. So there are specific items that need to be communicated specifically to those charged with governance. Again, please read back on our lesson to take a look at some of those, what they are. Sorry, management, we don't really care about your preference, but let's take a nice look at some excerpts. So before communicating with a subgroup or audit committee of those charged with governance, we're going to consider the responsibilities, the nature of the matter, requirements, whether whether the subgroup can act on the information or provide further explanations. Management's preference is least relevant. Auditors communicate based on what is in the best interest of the organization, not on someone's preference. So again, sorry, management, but we do not care about what you want. Next up here, an auditor determines that a client who received a federal grant fraudulently reported information to the federal government. The client's management refuses to acknowledge the fraud. Which of the following parties should the auditor contact first? Now, this is something that we have seen also in our government single audit sections, but it does, there's so much overlap in this entire exam, right? Engagement communication applies to every type of engagement. So you'll likely see, questions in this section about every type of engagement. So generally, and this thought process, right? What we're going to talk about here, this thought process generally applies to who you should talk about whenever you see fraud, and especially once the fraud is not being acknowledged. Where are we going to go? To which party are we going to communicate that to? Okay. Well, are we going to, first, let's just talk about C and D, right? We've got specific organizations, right? The state accountancy board, state attorney general's office. Some questions might say the FBI, the police, whatever. Generally, that's not going to be the answer, right? Generally, we're not going to go to these specific entities. It's not going to be set in stone saying you need to go to that one entity. Whether it's in this specific instance or many other questions, you're not going to specifically go there. Now, if it says something like the audit committee, or some group that is genuinely and commonly referred to in our exam, then sure, that's a possible answer, right? Those charged with governance, management, audit committee. So those could be answers, but these organizations that aren't commonly mentioned, I would kind of cross those off. And then the recipients of the client's services. I mean, so like the client, let's say they're not for profit, they service underprivileged children. We're not going to really contact those individuals about the fact that there's fraud there. However, the federal government gives a grant to the non for profit, and well, essentially you're saying, hey, you all gave money to this entity, and the entity squandered it. They committed fraud. So, I mean, that's my thought. That's not my thought process. That's my take, based on the information provided and what's known. Here's a slide, right, that we've seen. So the communication is significant findings, blah, 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 right here. If fraud in spending a grant or restricted funding is detected by the The first to be informed is the agency that provided the grant. So again, like so many other questions, you can memorize it. You can also take my understanding, my explanation. Hopefully the joint nature of those two help you to remember it for the exam. During the course of an audit, the auditor uncovers a serious misappropriation of cash attributed to the senior accountant. This is required to be communicated to. So again, like I said in the prior question, the IRS, no, they're not really relevant here at all. I mean, like maybe the FASB would be more relevant, but even if it's at FASB, I'd cross that off. The police, no, that's not gonna be an answer, right? We are auditors. We're following the audit rules per the AICPA and PCAOB, right? And there's a order in which we need to do this. So whenever there's fraud, generally speaking, right, we are going to go to those charged with governance. And since those charged with governance are not mentioned here, well, the audit committee is the appropriate group because they are representative of governance, right? So governance communication is talked about significantly. The auditor is required to communicate about significant findings of fraud to those overseeing the financial reporting process. That's not necessarily management. So that's why I cross off management right there. So all the other ones, I'm not going to call them ridiculous answers, but definitely answers that we would not choose. All right. During an audit, an auditor discovers so much fraud. Unfortunately, so much fraud here. During an auditor discovers a fraudulent expense reimbursement for a low-level manager. The auditor determines that this transaction is inconsequential and several similar transactions would not be material to the financial statements in the aggregate. Which of the following statements best describes the auditor's required response to the discovery? So what should we do? Okay, we've got a situation here. We've got a situation. Copy that. Losing my mind here, right? Don't worry, everyone. I am losing my mind, but I have my accounting knowledge all pat down and tight. So the auditor's responsibility is satisfied by documenting that the single transaction is inconsequential. So you're for sure going to document this kind of thing, right? You're going to document it, but is it satisfied by just documenting it and saying it's inconsequential? No. So we also say fraudulent expense reimbursement for low-level manager. Key trigger here is we see fraud and management. So the question's trying to trick you, right? Because it's low-level manager, inconsequential, and several similar transactions would not be material. It's trying to really play this down. But anytime you see fraud and management, that's a problem. It could be stealing $100 from the company, but if management's doing it, and we've seen this in our lessons, right? The thought process there is it's indicative of not malicious, it's indicative of negative behavior on the part of management, right? Which could indicate possible other issues. So auditors should report this finding to those charged with governance. I think it's a pretty good answer, right? Let's chalk that up and possibly come back to it. The auditor should fully investigate other transactions related to this manager to determine if fraud exists. So, it already says they discovered fraud. So, you're going to fully investigate, but that's not your required response. Once you find a level of fraud, right? It could be $1 of fraud, but on part of management, you're gonna go ahead and communicate it, right? So yeah, you're gonna do this likely additionally, but once that dollar of fraud is found, you need to communicate it. And who are we going to do that to? The auditor should bring the transaction to the attention of the appropriate level of management. So we're looking at that there. So the appropriate level, this is actually a very, very good question because letter B and D could likely both be answers here. It's a low-level manager. The reason, and this is the beauty of the audit exam, right? So two right answers. I'll explain to you the difference here. So a low-level manager, right? If it's just like a new company with, I don't know, hundreds of managers, and it's a newly hired, very low-level manager, if you go to a high level of management, they could easily, they're so far away from this low-level manager, they could just give them the boot and say, you're fired, you're done. And that would be appropriate. But, if it says like a general manager or, high level of management or a lot of people in management, basically what I'm trying to get at is if there's if you can't just if you don't think there's enough separation between other people in management and this one manager or group of managers that are committing the fraud, then you should go to those charged with governance. So in this case, I would say it's letter D, although letter B would be a correct answer in many other instances where it's pervasive fraud throughout management. If there's collusion with a bunch of different managers, in most other cases, I would say it's those charged with governance. But in this case, just because of the reasons I've said, it is going to be the appropriate level of management. Here is a nice little takeaway from our lessons, right? Who are we going to communicate with? In which case are we going to communicate to those charged with governance, both management and those charged with governance? So again, a good opportunity to review this. Please take a look right here. Fraud detected within management, regardless of materiality, right? So again, this question, hey, I'm reading the AICPA's questions. I'm trying to give you the best explanation on why they would explain it. Generally, yeah, I would say it's letter B. Again, based on what we're teaching here in the lessons, but that does happen. There are AICPA questions that will be something like this, where it kind of goes against what we talk about here. Just letting you know those are out there. But the beauty of this exam is, and not to stress you out, right? The beauty of this exam is if enough people get a question like this wrong, it doesn't count, on the exam. So if you see a question like this and you think you'd get something like this wrong, odds are everyone else feels that way and you wouldn't have to worry about it. But I think this was a great opportunity to kind of talk about the rationale and thought process of those who write the questions. Because I've written many questions in my time. I've analyzed questions. I've talked to people from the AICPA who have written questions. And this is what was going through their mind when they wrote this question. So again, keep this all in mind, not to stress you out. You're getting a good advantage by hearing out my thoughts on this, and you're doing well. I'm sure you're doing well. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of effort, but you can do it. Treat yourself to something nice today. That's in order. You deserve it. Treat yourself well. Mental health, physical health, spiritual health, whatever you need to do. You do it. You keep working hard, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey there. Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material. We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.